Welcome to an uncut episode of Unseen Marketplace. I have some lovely, phenomenal guests. We have Allan, Kate, and Bridget. Guys, I think I'm excited about this one because this is the first ever, guys, that we have had the ability to have a man and women on at the same time. I'm always like, why is everybody scheduling like all the women schedule together and all the men will schedule together? I'm like, we need some versatility, variety. So I'm so glad to have these amazing guests. Guys, we're going to get right into the podcast like we normally do in this episode. But if you have any connections and really want to just reach out to any one of these amazing leaders, entrepreneurs in the marketplace, you can go ahead and look inside of the description and all of their information is right there. So we're really blessed today because we have a variety of expertise in the room. So I'm pretty excited about that. But let's start off with one question that I have is, how do each of you guys feel? And just jump right in. How do you feel about now the communication and how you're having to communicate versus what you had to do and how you had to communicate maybe before COVID? Because it's kind of weird. It's like, it's great because everything is very virtual. It's, everybody's kind of come up with the times and learned some things. So you're like, yes and amen. Some techie people finally, yielded. But then you have the lack of communication and physical touch and relationship throughout the COVID that now it's kind of weird to navigate that. So how would you say you're using communication and tech together and now mixed with artificial intelligence, let's just say? How are you guys handling this? Anybody can start.
I would tell you, Tanya, that I just try to keep it so organic, if you will, because I know that all of this technology available, there's so many different ways that you can communicate with one another. However, I do not negate the fact that people still love handwritten thank you notes or handwritten letters, right? Or, even I know that text is sometimes it can be super insensitive or it doesn't feel like you care. But even when I send a quick text and say, hey, Holy Spirit just put you on my heart today, and they'll reach back out or they'll call me and they'll be like, you have no idea what I've been dealing with. And so I just try to keep it so natural and organic and just kind of feel the leading of who needs to be touched that day. And I pray about that. I'm like, I need to know, God, from you, who needs to hear from you through me today. I don't make it about me at all, right? I want to communicate with them however I need to communicate with them. And I love that we have so many open channels because it can get overwhelming, but I do love that we can communicate with people in so many different ways.
I love that. Allan, you're like the dude in communication over here. So we're going to go to Allan and then Kate can come. That was Bridget who just spoke.
Well, I don't know if I could beat that, but basically, I find it fantastic because I see, as long as people are balanced, and I see the best of both worlds. Before COVID and before I started working on social media, I was always a good connector, a good networker, and I built up a big meetup group when I was living in Vancouver. But when COVID started, I then said, what can I do technologically? So I looked at Facebook and I said, look at my 5,000 almost friends that are not really friends. What can I do to make it more personal? So I said, okay, instead of saying I'm not going to use it and, kind of forget about technology, I started to reach out, added 10 people a day, deleted 10 people a day, people that never got back to me or said they would but didn't. So I said, that's not the kind of person I want to connect with. And if I hadn't done that every day since COVID, that's how I met Tanya. And that's how I've met many people without any expectation of sales. Sometimes a client came over it, sometimes a collaboration, sometimes a podcast like we're doing now. I don't stop doing it because I'm not one of these people just thinking, how do I scale my business and just take it to the next level and not connect with human beings? So for me, I'm doing that. Plus now with COVID's over, I'm doing some local things too. So I got the best of both worlds.
I love it, and I will vouch for that because Allan, when we spoke, we had conversation for a couple of weeks. It was really organic. It was wonderful. And then when we jumped on, we were just like, oh man, we can collaborate. We can do this. We could do this, and it was fun. So I loved the approach that he had. Kate, what is your take on communication and?
Well, I think with COVID, it opened up some doors because now virtual community is so much more common. And so then it makes it a little bit more normal that you are meeting people online.
Yeah.
For what I do with supporting women, there is an element of wanting a little bit of anonymity. And so when COVID allowed for things to move online, it was like more normal that people would be able to come into online spaces. So now you're not having to go to your local church where you might run into somebody, but you can actually have a little bit more like there's less likely of an opportunity to run into someone that you might know uh, when you're in an online community if you're looking for something where you don't want to be known. But then the great thing is like Bridget and I actually met via a different online community, and we same thing like you're saying with Allan. We were like when we call ourselves FLBFs, like we were immediate like best friends via this virtual community online, and then we would never have been able to do that without an online way of connecting. And then we actually got to meet in person. And so you do still want that personal element because there's a difference between just seeing someone over the screen, but you can really actually create solid relationships and feel like you've known someone even when you've never met them. It's kind of strange.
I love all the different perspectives that we have, and you are so right. I like the fact that we're discussing that virtual has become more acceptable. And before everything, when I started in industry, it's been like 20 years, but I'm very young. So when I started, it was more like, oh, you're doing that online thing, or oh, that's so sales, and it's scammy, it's whatever. And now it's normal. It's like, oh, you have virtual business, and it's instead of hearing, oh, you're doing that online thing, which is very demeaning to people who are really running an organization and building something out of obedience. So I love that. Something that was said, Bridget was talking about that she flows and she's just led. And so as believers, something that what I've noticed is we're still having an aftermath of COVID when it comes to mental health. And there's a lot of trauma. And even so, a lot of betrayal. A lot of men have left their homes, a lot of tension, a lot of mothers that were, doing things with their spouse or just at least the support. They have none anymore. They're single mothers and they're single fathers as well. And so the one thing that got me was, I don't know if you guys are aware, it's like 40 million women have launched businesses in since like 2021. That is insane. That was 60% of the workforce of women that have left. And they had to, because they had to be at home with the children and they had to take care. And then when husbands left. So what do you guys think? For me, as I'm talking, I've seen where I'm excited, but I've never seen the need, like the scripture that talks about, the woman that, the elders, that they need to come out and mentor the youth, the younger. I've never seen so much of a need for that right now, because they're individuals that have launched companies, coaching, and they have the right intention, right heart. I've always wanted to mentor this person, but they're not ready, or they're not being guided, or they have coaches that are definitely not believers, and so they're not going to help them and pray over them and guide them in that. How do you guys see between communication and individuals dealing with mental health issues and marital issues. And like I said, betrayal. I mean, not just betrayal in marriage. We're going to talk about betrayal as a whole, okay? Because you can even have students that will betray you. And so how do you think this is affecting the coaching industry right now? And we're going to, even speaking from believer standpoint as well, you guys, can jump in from there. But, we get kind of raw and real in these conversations. So let's talk about it, because I don't think even believers talk about mental health. They just want to throw scriptures at it and be like, yeah, Jesus will handle it. I'm like, what? Like, where do we come in here? Like, we got a pot. So I know, Bridget, you deal with that. You had a very abusive past, and you're helping restore women. And Allan, you're phenomenal at communication and developing those systems and really raw, real relationships. So that's great. And then that's why I said this panel is phenomenal. And then we have, we have Kate, who deals with betrayal, marriage infidelity, and let's just say healing as a whole.
Just Tanya, before you go on, if I could just say, so I want to give the right impression. Although communication is a big part of what I do, it's all founded on inner fitness. The inner fitness and the self-acceptance and loving ourselves as a foundation to great relationships is 80% of what I do. So I thought I'd just throw that in.
No, I love it. Yeah. But which adds the value of this. Like I said, this panel is wow. And I know I've been leading for over 20 years, but I mean, everybody kind of knows my story from, listening or whatever. You can go back to other episodes. So let's tackle this issue. We got mental health, betrayal. We have all this. How do you think this is affecting the coaching industry right now, and those that are stepping out in leadership and now leading other people? But we don't know, are they there yet?
Well, I mean, so I kind of want to lead on this and just say that, one, I have narrowed down my focus. I still deal with mental health, with trauma, all of that, because as a fire wife, I mean, that's just what we live in every day. My husband, we just had a conversation yesterday with some things that he's dealing with emotionally, physically, mentally, because of his job and the things that he's facing. And so, you think about, and I say this, if you've lived on this planet at any length of time, you have dealt with trauma. And so and I give this example, while birthing a child is a fantastic, beautiful blessing, it's a trauma. It can be traumatic, and those traumas just compound. And we think about all the things that just went through. Anybody that went through COVID went through trauma. I mean, we all were separated. There were different things we went through. I think about our children. I have 2 boys. Kate has 2 boys. I think about them and the things that they had to face. And again, one of the things that I cue in on my community and the fire wives that I help is that when the home is healthy and we are taken care of and we're giving our best, we're taking care of ourselves. And I love what Allan said. Whenever we're taking care of ourselves internally and we are healthy and well, and I look at a person, I'm a nurse too, you guys. So I look at a person from head to toe. Nothing is separated. Like, God didn't make us a brain over here and a hand over here. Like, he didn't make us that way. And so the way that we have neglected mental health and the focus on that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now. And the pandemic just compounded it like threefold, right? Or probably more than that. And so again, just bringing it back home, when I know that I'm well and taking care of myself, and then I give the best of myself to my family, to my husband, and I'm sending them out of my home well and healthy, and I pray over them, and I, anoint them if I have to, right? Like all the things, whenever we're going out of our home that way, then we can be a reflection of Christ in our communities, whether it's online or in person. We can be a reflection of that healing that we've developed in ourselves, and then we can pour it out onto other people.
No, well said.
I think, go ahead, Allan.
No, I was just saying, well said. Go ahead, Kate.
I'm all of what Bridget said, I totally agree. And I think kind of what with your original question, sometimes inside of the church we can get so stuck in like, well, I'm praying about it, or oh,
Hmm.
okay, like God's got that. But it's like we don't stop and acknowledge that like it is a trauma. It is hard. Like what you're going through absolutely is difficult and terrible, and there's real emotion behind it. And so when we just gloss over it with like, well, I'm praying for you, it's like, okay, but I need more than prayer right now. Like I do need prayer. Absolutely. I 100% believe God has like is in this with me, but I also need more, like I need some practical tools, or I need a support system that's going to help me through this, and not just someone saying they're going to pray for me. And so I think sometimes that's where the church can be like a little bit too churchy. And I didn't grow up in a Christian household, so I have a different, like I didn't grow up experiencing some of that, but you see, just the idea like, yes, God's got this, and that doesn't mean he didn't provide people and tools to help you get through this. And that's where I think like these coaches, there's such a need for that in the mentorship. But absolutely, like, is it where's it rooted in? What is it rooted in? And where are the mentors that are going to actually help you in a way that is helpful and not going to cause more trauma or more, mental health issues. And so it's really making sure that the people that are doing it are equipped, and are going to do that. I don't have an answer as to how you can ensure that, because a lot of people are out there trying to share their voice and make a name for themselves. But I think we have, in our spirits, we know when we've connected with the right person for us, and the right person for one person isn't the right person for another person. And that's where, the God made the body with all sorts of parts, not that we're all disconnected, but if you need a hand, then you need a hand, and maybe one day you need, an ear, and there's people in each of those places. So
Yeah.
I have two things I want to say that are kind of separate but connected.
Yeah.
One is, I think, Tanya, one of your questions was, what do we think about the current state of coaches and how they can manage and be an effective coach within a world that's so stressed out? I think that was one of your questions. My answer for myself has always been, I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a master. And that's why I've carefully held back from scaling my business to another level. Maybe I'm a late bloomer because now I'm starting to scale it. But I always wanted to be a master, because why would I want to be another? Everyone today, every day, I meet a person who's a life coach, and everyone calls themselves a life coach. Sometimes they take a course for a month or two and then put up their shingle. So that's fine, and they probably help people to some degree. But I don't feel good about myself unless I'm sufficiently mastering what I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about how to become more confident and clear in your communication, I better be a good communicator. I'll hang up my gloves right now.
Yeah.
If I'm talking about achieving a level of mental wellness and inner peace and tranquility, I better be living that. And generally, people can feel it. So that's number one. Secondarily, with what you both shared very beautifully, it resonates with me 100%, because everything, my journey really in the coaching industry started when I came close to dying on the desert. I was a mess. I was in second year university, taking a psychology degree. I knew that I wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. And when I came close to dying on the desert, it changed my life forever. And when I came back home to Montreal, I met these people that had these calm, clear, centered eyes, and I was stressed out. And I said, and they were living at something called the Zen Meditation Center, and some Christians might see it as something evil or the devil. I see it more like the mental wellness part of things. But anyway, I ended up living like a Zen monk for 9 years, where I experienced a lot of inner contentment, whatever. But when I missed women too much, I went back into society, and I was a mess. And I went back to get a master's degree in education. I actually met a woman who brought me to a church. Being Jewish by background, I didn't really know much about Christianity. And I had a born again experience. I went up and I prayed in tongues. And to this day, I pray in tongues, but I don't necessarily go to any specific church because some people saw me as this guy's different. And so I said, well, I'm going to follow God, not what people say, even if they're from a church. I want to follow God first. And it made one thing really became clear to me. And this is where what we're talking about, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
Is for me, the only really important Bible verse that I ever read was love God with all your heart and all your soul and love others as yourself, which implied to me you have to accept and love yourself, not in a ego way, in a self-respectful way. And if you do all those three things, you are going to be well off, and in so many ways. And I realized as I looked around even the church and friends that I had going to the church, that the self part, they were almost afraid to deal with that because they felt that was too selfish. So they focused on either God or helping others, and then enabling the other. So I put together a program for the masses, not so much for religious, spirituality or whatever. And I said, I want to work on the others and the self part, because the God part is clear. You just go to church, you can pray. Allan Knight is not a minister. So over the years, I developed a program that if people go through, they actually get to quite a high level of inner contentment, confidence, and effective communication. So that's why I wanted to that was my gift that I've been given, to work on those two areas and help people in their relationship.
I like that because, it's taken forever, I shall confess. But I did watch The Chosen and I was like, oh, it's so good. And it's so funny because just kind of putting some flesh on some things that, and sight, it was Jesus. I didn't realize how much Jesus went into solitude. Like even as he was leading people, there's a couple times in the series where they were like, I don't know where he is. He's been gone 4 days. He's been gone a whole week. He's been gone since whatever. And it was funny because where was he? He was in solitude. And it's almost like bringing, like what you said, the Zen monk feel, that solitude, that reassures, that life, collaborating and bringing it into your everyday life. And so, for many years, that was something that was healing to me. For the last, I'm going to say about 4 years, I've been really heavy in solitude. When everybody left the house, I had the opportunity through COVID and everything, before COVID, to, like, the kids were gone, everybody's gone, and I got to just be 8 hours in the house. And there were times that it was just like, well, stop, don't work, don't do anything, just put aside everything and just be with me. There was a couple things really quickly. I love what you said, Allan, because when you said about mastery, that's just stewardship. Yes. Right? We're stewarding over what God gave us. And so I love how he said that. It does not mean, I love the phrase, I used to self-sabotage. There's a leader that once told me, Tanya, you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I started like building and then sabotaging and building it because I could only do one thing. But I sang, I wrote music, I taught, I spoke, I did spoken word, I created, I designed. There was tech. I wrote books. There was so much that I did. I didn't realize that those were just distribution centers. There was still a mastery of the call. And so one day I went to go to teach, and God just convicted me. He said, go look at that scripture, or go look at that quote. And it said, you're a jack of all trades, a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And it changed my life forever. And that's when I said, I'm going to help those that are duly anointed, those that I know that can be in the marketplace, but also, be out there. And you're not mastering necessarily this distribution. I think there's a way to do that. But, over time, the Proverbs 31 woman didn't master everything all in one day.
Right.
She did it through seasons. And so, but the church always has this fearful thing that you're going to miss something if you don't master it now. And it's just like, you're going to miss what God has for you. And it's an awful thing. And so I love how he talked about the mastery, but yet at the same time, it was the stewardship of what he had. But he realized that there were many distributions, many channels. He could have a program, he can have conversations, he can have a book. It wasn't like, okay, I got to be this master like publisher, you know what I mean? But the other thing was, Kate, I think that when you said, where does this start? It starts with these conversations. The reality that you have 4 leaders on here that can be raw and real and be like, heck yeah, some of the stuff that has been taught to me was sucky. That sometimes when I've gone to churches, my leaders, made me feel a certain way, or convicted me, or actually didn't represent Christ in the most loving way. It's reality. Let's just be real. And then us being an example for that. Us coming out, us saying, when we get discouraged at times, it's like, no, I have to do this podcast. I have to write this blog post. I have to, not that, it's only going to reach 2 or 3, but you don't know who those 2 or 3 were reached. So I think it starts with these conversations. And then Bridget, you mentioned the self-care and, as a fire wife and mom and helping others. And I looked at it as, especially with women, we could be pressured to step into such a servanthood that we forget that any kind of servanthood starts with ourselves.
Right.
Because we leave a part of ourselves in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I think I kept hearing as we were going through, in my spirit, was shame.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about the word shame? Because I think that this is where we have self-confident issues. And even when Allan was talking about like how he went into like this solitude, do you know, when I was ministering, it was many, many years ago, I don't know, maybe over 20. And I did this women's conference, and these women were not even able to look in the mirror. Mm-hmm. They had to, like, other than put makeup on or whatever, when they had to like literally look in the mirror and look at their facial features and stand before, I mean, it took me a while to even stand before, after children, after everything, stand before, whether naked or dressed, and be like, you know what? I appreciate your eyes. I appreciate your hair, even though it's crazy and growing out right now, right? I appreciate your body and where you are, because I know that every single day you're working out, you're taking care of yourself, you're working on your eating. It's a progress. And so, leaders are not sharing some of the things that they're going through. Mm-hmm. And there's a shame behind it. It's like, I can't share that I'm a believer, but how about this one? I caught a cold. I have heard, like, it's like, wait, okay, you're in the world. Yeah, but you know what people say? Well, you obviously got it. You didn't, you weren't whatever. You weren't spiritual enough. You didn't pray enough. You should be able to get rid of that cold, or you don't have enough faith. And I'm like, wow, that's like destroying people. So we've put so much shame on believers that I don't know if they're really even, like, they're saying they're life coaches, they're saying they're leading, but when I'm with them, they're so insecure.
Tanya,
Yeah.
Can I just jump in a sec?
Yeah.
Is what you're talking about is so important. How I see that is it's pervasive, not just in church, just in people in general. One of the reasons I recently started something called the Soulmate Revolution, I started to realize that unless we develop not just self-development, but unless we have deep, unconditional, loving relationships, not just with our partner maybe first and foremost, but beyond that, our kids and our friends and the world at large, we're never going to get anywhere. And that takes us to develop our inner soulmate first. And when people ask me, Allan, you've been coaching for 30 years, what's the number one thing that you see holding most people back? I can make a list of 25, but the one thing that definitely jumps out at me is that most of us are way too self-critical and hard on ourselves. And when we're that insecure and timid and overly shy and have these emotional psychological blocks, that's going to create shame and other kinds of emotions. Unless a person could heal from that and develop such an accepting, like I look at myself now, my brother sent me a picture of when I was 21. I said, wow, I was really good looking, but I hated myself. Now I'm an old man, I think I'm cute. I get more attention now from women than I ever did when I was 21. And so, and the reason is, what I try to teach people is, let's walk around first within ourselves like a walking 24 hours love machine, loving and receiving love and loving others without the emotional psychological crap. If we all did that, then we'd have more and more soulmate relationships, soulmate families, and soulmate communities. Anyway, I get too passionate about it. So
I love that. But guys, you know, and Bridget and Kate jump in. Let's give everybody practical things that they're going to walk away with. We want them to be able to say, you know what? Okay, Allan spoke about love. Okay, how do we love ourselves? How do we even get to the point that we can stand there? Let's just be really honest. Amongst all the gaslighting that we have, that many, you know, and a lot of women get gaslighted, I'm just going to say, because the vulnerability of having a man where we want to be protected, we want to be, you know, there's something about a man and his presence, about his masculinity. Even the strongest woman doesn't want to have to be strong all the time. She loves. We're not conditioned to hold the weight of it. It actually gets us sick. If I could show you what I looked like, I have, you know, things where I held the weight of that masculinity. It was draining me. And over the years, it was like, oh, you're so strong. But I'm like, but did you look at me? Did you look at how unhealed I am? I'll have to show you a picture if I can get it up of what I actually looked like. And so let's talk about that, because there's so much betrayal. How do you even have a soul relationship? How do you even have healthy? How do you even believe that there are healthy relationships? To the point that if you have daddy issues, how can you look at God? God changed, everything changed for me when I looked at God not as God anymore, but when I looked at him as Father. A different level of intimacy came in, but it took me time, because every man that I had been with had mishandled the anointing and mishandled me as a woman and my femininity. So let's talk about that.
I mean,
Go ahead, Kate. Go ahead, Kate. Do it.
No, absolutely. And I think, well, I deal with a lot of shame, right? And it's shame, and it's not funny, but it's shame around someone else's choices. Even like women feel ashamed because their husband was unfaithful. It was their husband's choice. It wasn't their choice, yet they're the ones that are feeling shamed. And it's comes down to, I think, realizing, one, you know, the power that you have in your choices and what you're choosing for yourself, and that you aren't powerless, because we can often feel powerless, but that's not actually the truth. We can't control other people, but we absolutely can control ourselves, and that's easy to lose sight of. And it can get back into what I was saying before, you know, when the church just wants to skip over the acknowledgement of the difficulty. It's like, it's okay for it to be hard. It's okay for you to acknowledge the truth of where you're at, because if you're not even acknowledging this truth, then how are you ever going to move through it? And so part of moving through something is knowing that it's there, and not just pushing it away and pretending like it's not there. And so I think what as a practical tool, what I help people or women do is, you know, think about, like, what is it about you that makes you uniquely amazing? Like, what are your, as Christians, we would say, like, what are your unique giftings? What has God given you that he wants you to show to the world? And it's not beauty, it's not wealth. It's like, what is it that draws your friends to you? What is it that makes you special and amazing, and that you can overcome the lies that you're telling yourself and replace them with truth? Because we can't just say, oh, that's not true, or that we have to also then say what is true. And so you that's the renewing of the mind and replacing the lies that you've been telling yourself, because what you tell yourself is powerful. And so then you have to replace those lies. And if you can't do it yourself, then you need other people to help you with that. You need to let someone else be the mirror. If you can't look into the mirror and see it for yourself, then go ask someone else that's a safe place for you to be the mirror. And that's what like the community that I provide is like, let us be the mirror for you, because sometimes you can't be it for yourself right now. And that's the reality. And you might need to just start there. Start with the reality that this is where I'm at, and acknowledge that, instead of trying to pretend like it's all okay and pretend like you have it all together. And I wanted to say this when you were talking before, and it is connected to what I'm saying, but I think as Christians, what we do, and it's a mistake both inside of the church and outside of the church, is pretend that we have it all together. Because then it's backwards. Like, we aren't perfect because we're Christians. We're imperfect, and that's why we need Jesus. Right. And so if the world will point at Christians and say, well, you're Christian, so you should da 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 da. And I'm like, no, I need Jesus because of da 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 da, all the things. Right. And I'm not sitting here trying to say I'm perfect and I have it all together because I'm a Christian. Like, no, I'm a Christian because I know I'm imperfect and I need Jesus to help continue me, like to help me be like a loving person in this world, because my flesh, wouldn't be this person. And so outwardly, like that, it harms the church in that way. And then inside of the church, we all think we can't be honest and vulnerable because everybody else has it together. And well, that was wrong. What I did was wrong, or this is embarrassing. But it's like, isn't that why we need Jesus to begin with? Like, and isn't that what brought us here?
I think there's different levels too, right? So, somebody might deal with, let's just say, molestation or physical abuse or something that they had dealt with in their 20s, because that's what God needed them to deal with. And then maybe at your 40s, somebody else at their 40s, then God says, now you need to handle this because now you're equipped enough to handle it. You couldn't handle it at 21 like somebody else. You need to handle it here. So I think all of us go on these separate journeys. And timing is everything. It's what, you know what I mean? It's what, like, I think that Allan is able to handle certain things because he decided to go and look and search himself. He's the man that he is now, which is why he's attracting women, because there's a security, there's a safety, there's a sense of him knowing who he is. Here's most important. Allan knows his vision. He knows how to lead. Why? Because now if a woman comes along, she knows what to multiply, because he already knows what he's leading. And this is what I'm doing. This is my assignment. You have a lot of men that don't know that. And they're willing, they want to go from woman to woman, or however, they're not willing to be long enough in solitude. Nobody really is. There's a fear there. So, it's like, Kate, that's what I just wanted to add to what you were saying, because I think that it doesn't make me any less mature in who I am as a leader or experience. It just means this is my time to go through that. Like, so good. Leader, always going through another level of I'm going through another level of purification now, because God said, I'm about to have you go here. You need to go and deal with, how about there's multiple layers? Just because I dealt with one thing of molestation when I was younger, I've dealt with that 5 or 6 different times, or I've dealt with 5 or 6 different times, having a father or fatherless or men or however. And every time I'm growing and growing. So it's layer upon layer. Like we're slowly getting to the root. Sometimes God says, pull out the root. And some God says, prune the tree for a second, because I don't think you can handle what's going to come.
Absolutely. I say all the time that anything that we go through in life is such a process. We think about the birthing process. Life is a process. The different stages of life is a process. Dying as a process. I was a hospice nurse for 8 years. So I went through the dying process, with many people. But in those processes and in those layers that we're uncovering, and I say that too, Tanya, is that we're like onions. We have to pull back the layers, to get to the root of what we're dealing with. And it can be a snatch, like you said, or it can be a slow process. And we have to be okay with whatever length of time that process is. It's so hard sometimes. Like when I came out of the domestic violence situation that I was in and into where I was healthier, it wasn't overnight that I healed from those things, right? Even guys, I say this all the time. I have Jesus and a counselor because we have blind spots, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to have someone tell us about the blind spots. So I'm sitting in a counseling session with my husband and we're talking, and our counselor's like, I don't know why you're here. Like, you guys are great. You're doing phenomenal. And then I just keep talking and she's like, hold on a second. I had been carrying a lie around for 15 years. And when I realized it, she's like, I'm going to need you to close your eyes right now. I'm going to need you to ask Holy Spirit what you're doing with that.
I love
Because
it.
I didn't know that I was carrying around the fact that I didn't think that I had the answers that God's given me, that I didn't think that I was good enough to coach the people coming into my community as a fire wife, that I didn't think that I had the words from the knowledge of 35 years of being saved in the ministry, right? Like, I didn't think I had that to give to someone else. And so I believed the lie that I wasn't, let's just say I wasn't enough. Okay. Because I was in a marriage where where it was bad. And even though it wasn't anything that I did, like Kate said, we carry that shame with us. Like, why would I carry that? It's because it goes all the way back to the beginning in the garden when the enemy used his lies to deceive Eve and say, did God really say that that's what's true? Or did, and he deceives us. And that's his number one tactic, is to help us and do everything he can to believe the lie that he's been trying to shove at us for years. And when I realized that I was carrying that 15-year lie around, that's how old my oldest son almost is. He is almost 15. And when I think that I carried a lie for as old as my child almost is, that is a revelation, you guys. And for me to be able to heal from that and step into a new layer of that healing was so freeing. And it's messy, so messy sometimes to uncover the trauma that we've been dealing with, but it's so necessary to get to the next level of where God wants us to be.
So, so well said. And Tanya, since you've asked for a practical solution, I'm going to share a potential practical solution. I know it'll sound simplistic, but it's very effective. Is one of the first things I tell, because when I talk to people about self-development or overcoming your emotional, psychological blocks, I always say to them, I would say that unless you get fed up with mediocrity, you'll never grow. A lot of times people talk about developing themselves, developing their spiritual, their personal development. Talk is easy. But in order to actually make change in your life, you need to get emotionally fed up. The gig is up. I don't want to leave mediocrity. Now here's where the practical solution comes in. I just taught someone this yesterday. She's going through all this emotional, psychological stuff. I say, look, obstacles and challenges, I actually welcome them. Most of us talk about positive thinking, mindset, affirmations, all this kind of stuff. I'm focusing on how do we overcome the obstacles and the challenges that come our way every day, either from the outside or inside. And what I tell people is that we think the problem is that the obstacles make us feel crummy. That's not the problem. Yes, they will feel crummy, and that's okay as a first step. The problem is what we do with the obstacles and challenges, what we do with the emotions once we're aware that we're in anger, shame, fear, insecurity, timidity, jealousy, whatever it be. Most of us either hold on to it inside and stuff it, or lay it on other people and hurt and abuse our relationships. So a practical solution is this. If you experience, like one of the women that I'm coaching right now, she gets triggered by her ex who has to come to her house every 2 weeks to work on the garden. And so I say, when you get triggered and you feel angry, go into the room. If you have to, take out a pen and paper and speak to yourself and say, look, how are you feeling right now? I'm feeling crummy. I'm angry. I'm PO'd. I'm this. Get it off your chest. Don't run away from the feelings. A lot of people try to push them as if they're not happening. So I say, feel it, embrace it, express it. Once you've expressed enough, then ask yourself this question: what can I do right now to get back in the spirit, to get back in the zone, to get back in the super highway of life? And so then get back to what I call your inner fitness, just like physical fitness, your inner fitness exercise. Let's say I have an insecurity about no woman could love me. So if I say I'm a lovable guy, that would be a lie. So my three-part affirmation that I give people is you write it down, you write it, and then write your reactions, write it again, write your reactions. And as time goes on, the negativity starts to lessen, and the strength of the inner feeling of positivity strengthens. So you get things off your chest, go inside, work on your inner fitness exercise, and get back to God, get back to spirit, get back to the super highway. But most of us are either holding it in or dumping it there. And that's a little practical tool that I learned that works. So I thought I would share.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I don't want to brush over the fact that you said, feel the feeling. And that's that acknowledgement part, to acknowledge that you are experiencing that, because
And it's
some people
okay.
just have such a hard time even acknowledging that they're experiencing what they're experiencing. And that's the first step, to then take the step to write these things down and to get through those emotional feelings and turn them into what they need to be. That's a good
Bridget,
step.
if I hadn't learned to be vulnerable, and if I hadn't gone through hours of crying, dealing with anger, expressing, releasing emotion, I'd be dead a long time ago.
Right.
Long time ago.
I heard, and this is not my quote, so I wish I could take credit for it, but just like an hour ago, I heard this. It's Jim Kress, he's a counselor. He said, mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs. And I just thought that sums up like what Allan was saying. Like, you have to be mentally healthy, you have to acknowledge the reality, even in the hard things, because that's what allows you to move forward into mental health and a
This
healthy place.
the interesting thing about this young lady that I'm coaching, she's brought up in Montana in a redneck environment. She says, I'm like a man, she's beautiful. I'm like a man in a woman's body. So for her, she doesn't even feel emotions. Only now is she starting to realize that it could be a healthy thing. And as long as you express emotion with assertiveness, not with victimhood, it's actually a good thing. And more men need to learn that. If not all men, all women, but a lot of men need to really learn. My book that I write, Mind Gone Wild, my first copy of it was A Knight Without Armor, because I wanted to come out as a man who became a little vulnerable with his emotional armor. But I changed the name. Maybe I should take it back to Knight Without Armor.
No, I honestly, I like it because there's a couple aspects to this. We have the church culture where, you know, you're put to shame if you have a feeling. You shouldn't be this. You're too mature in Christ to feel this. You're, you know, whatever. So there's shame. Then you have the other part where, you know, it's culture. It's how you were raised. You know, men are often taught, you know, you can't cry. You know, you're not allowed to cry. Don't be emotional. Don't be whatever. You know that. I remember going through a lot of traumatic things, and a lot of people told me, don't let your children see you cry. Don't let them see you weak. I'm like, why not? Let them see me emotional. Let them also see my maturity. Let them also see that I always go to God. Let them also see that I have peace, no matter what, that surpasses all understanding. Because now I'm training them in the way that they should go. Because if I don't show them that it's okay to be scared and cry and have those emotions, and then say, okay, God, just help me, get them, that they're not equipped. They're not equipped. And so, you know, as we're ending with this, I want to go around, and we've talked about a whole lot here. I've been writing notes. So if you see me put my head down, a lot of times that's what I'm doing. But we spoke about mastery and stewardship and shame and, oh my gosh, and servanthood and self-care, communication. I mean, betrayal. We didn't get too much into some of how to deal with some of those things, but I wanted to show you, I found the pictures. So this was me before healing. Okay. This was me. And I was everybody's, you're so strong, you're so this. I was actually teaching self-defense. I was still leading. I was doing all of that. A few years later, I learned inner healing. And all I was doing was maybe going for a walk in the morning. It wasn't doing anything hardcore, and it changed. And I wanted, and this was me prior to. This is me as I'm going through, and I'm looking at myself like I don't even recognize myself. Inflammation, all of that. As I learned to heal and go through the process, this was me only 2 or 3 years later.
Wow.
When you put these two together and you can actually take a look at yourself, I mean, like, honestly, this is definitely, that's a dramatic change.
Right.
Right. And so when people are telling me, you know, about inner healing or about weight loss, oh, how did you lose weight? How did you do that? I healed.
Yes.
I'm just going to be honest with you. I healed. They don't believe me. And I'm like, no, I'm really, really serious. Like, not just healing from trauma, betrayal, all that, but I also healed from food. I also I took blood work and I started figuring out what was wrong. And I have thyroid issues. I have immune suppressant issues. And so, you know, where did that come from? When I healed from trauma, I had to also learn how to get some of that trauma out of my muscles, out of my hips, out of you know, my neck, out of those things. There was a lot that I had to go through, and I still go through. It's years of process. And I had to put boundaries up, and I had to love and appreciate myself. This right here is what self-care looks like.
Yeah.
This woman is nowhere near what this woman is now. Right. And so just as a whole, sharing with everybody, this is not just like this hoax of, oh my gosh, you know, everybody wants this right now answer. And it's like, you got to start healing and love. And I always say the business, you know, 1 Corinthians 13 is the scripture that I go with whenever you're leading others. You know, love is patient, is kind, not envious, not boastful. Like, these are the things that we need to lead with love. Love is the foundation. Because it's also not sloppy. It's not enabling. It's not all that. A true God love and agape love is that way. And so a lot of individuals, when I look at them, I'm like, I can tell you don't love yourself. And I will literally say, go look at a picture of yourself. And you'll see your eyes and your face are puffy, all of it, and how you feel, and your body's aching, and you have a fatigue and no energy and all that. That's proof. And your body is so suppressed with everything that it's crying out for help. Right. This is where sicknesses and migraines and all of that. We have to look at not only just the, you know, diet that's happened and everything, but also just what does trauma and being under that have to, you know, what does that do to you? Like Allan said with the woman, you know, what does that being in that masculinity and that toxicity, being in there for too long as a woman, what does that look like? It looks like this. Thinking you can do everything, thinking that you have to lead and you have to be a servant without taking care of yourself first. Yeah, this is what that looks like. Now I've learned to be in complete femininity and operate in that way. And I still self-care. I actually spend more time in solitude than I do with people. But it makes me more effective, more anointed, and it actually makes me trust. Because I used to like go for like a 45-minute walk or something like that and constantly be on my phone, fearful that I was going to miss a client, that, oh my gosh, this, whatever. No. Now if I'm gone from 9 to 12 and it's just a solitude day, or if I need to rest for the weekend because I feel my body's getting fatigued or however, I find rest and strength in that solitude. Right. And so a lot of like what Allan had said about, okay, Zen, you know, everybody feels like it. Yeah, because the world, the believers have tainted, and they forgot that Jesus went into solitude. They forgot some of the practices that Christ did. And it might have taken somebody to go to 5 years of solitude as a monk or whatever to really gain who they are. Fine. If that's what they had to go through, fine. You know, I don't think that we should bash individuals. I think we need to just look at how we've tainted some of the things, and now we throw it away and make it look demonic or witchcraft or whatever, when take away the actual thing. Okay, fine. Put away where it came from, how it did, all that. Put that away. Solitude is solitude.
Right.
Love is love. Healing is healing. And they're all biblical. It's just the world and things have tainted and twisted things. So we need to get to the root of some of these things and stop pushing those things away. Let's go ahead, and we're going to end this episode. Like I said, we've talked about so many things. I knew it was going to be good because we had so many valuable leaders on here with so many different, which I believe that are in a place of mastery, are in a place of a level of healing to where they can speak at this place. So let's leave everybody really quickly with some practical things. You guys know all the topics that we've just talked about, some practical things, and whatever, guys, jumps out at you, write them all down, then find out the simplest way to start. Okay. It doesn't have to be, it's not going to be easy. Nothing simple is really easy. But, and then put them in order. What do you think you can practically do? Even if it's just for 30 days, even if it's just sitting in silence for 10 minutes a day and learning to just be in a place of solitude so you can love yourself, or looking in the mirror 5 minutes a day, or like Mo Robbins said, high-fiving yourself, whatever that looks like.
It was so good.
Right? Let's just take the baby steps. We'll go around. We'll end with Allan, and we'll honor the man in the room. So Kate, what would you leave our audience with today?
I think a good place to start is just to pay attention to what you are feeling. And when those feelings of shame or the feelings of discomfort come up, rather than push them away, just start to like have an awareness of them. Keep a journal. Bridget knows I don't like to journal, but write it down in your phone, whatever. Just start letting yourself live in the reality and acknowledging where you're at, and being okay with that reality and not trying to change it, just building an awareness of where you're at, labeling the feelings, labeling the emotions, and seeing what is common, for a period of time, and where your struggle really is, because you're probably, what you might think it is maybe not what it is. So you need to start paying attention and not try to label it too quickly.
Really quickly, before we go to Bridget, I just wanted to give everybody who the whole written thing, if they don't like to journal, I usually have my students, something that transformed everything for me was I wrote down me 10 years from now. And I just said, hey, you just stepped off the stage with thousands of people, to a loving husband and children. And this is what you just finished authoring, New York Times bestseller. Like I literally wrote down all of what I looked at. And then here's the key. I actually recorded myself speaking it.
Yes.
When I did that, I then played it every day. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd literally hear myself and visualize, because I heard my voice. So if you don't like to actually write journal, I would recommend that you could do an audio, or you could talk into your phone and it'll transcribe. But I would recommend doing that audio and then listen to yourself. How are you breathing? What are your emotions? What are the inflections in your voice? And it'll show a lot. Believe me, it can be difficult to hear yourself. It took me years to get to the point where I do audio devotionals. And it took me years. Now I almost in the network, I have a bunch of audio devotionals, and I'm going to set a podcast just for those. And there's been times I've gone through things and I couldn't find anything out there. So I went to my audios. It's one reason why I started developing them. And I just prophetically move and I declare scriptures and prayers and things like that. And do you know, they restored so much? But before, I could never hear my voice. So I just wanted to, share with you some, another alternative if you're not one that really loves to do that. But you're hearing yourself through audio is very, very powerful, especially declaring that over yourself and where you are right now. So Bridget, how would you leave everyone in the audience?
Yeah. So guys, I keep it real simple. Like Allan said earlier, love God, love others. Basically, I have that like right next to my desk. Love God, love others. I literally just try to keep it so simple for myself. So when I wake up in the morning, I actually just kind of stay there for a couple of seconds. And, a lot of people refer to that as grounding. Sometimes it's in the grass or, with nature, with earth. But like just to feel my feet hit the floor tells me that I have a purpose, that I was able to wake up again with breath in my lungs, and I have something to look forward to. You might keep your phone by the bedside, which is a bad habit, but that's okay. We can overcome those things. But don't look at it right away. That's what I'm trying to tell you, because I know people use their phones for an alarm, that kind of thing. Don't look at it. Just carry it with you. Check the time if you need to. Turn your alarm off if you need to. But don't look at it. You don't need to. That's what Mel Robbins said. Tanya just mentioned her. It was a great post. Go find her post. But don't let the world in, is what she said.
Mm-hmm.
It's not time for that as soon as you wake up. And I've read a study where the sooner you can get outside to get sunlight into your eyeballs, the first 10 minutes you wake up. I know that might not be possible for some people. Maybe you can walk out your back patio. Maybe you can't. Maybe you don't live in a place with a lot of sunshine. I do, fortunately. But if you can get one of those sensitized lights that you can get on Amazon, right? That gives you sunlight, but do something to boost yourself as soon as you get up.
Yeah.
I love coffee. I actually switched from like the Keurig K-cup, woo, hurry fast, right? I switched to that to pour over because it makes me slow down. I grind my own beans. I pour my coffee, my hot water over my coffee. Like whatever I can do to separate myself from the busyness and the harriedness of this world is what I am working on.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Allan.
Well, the knight without armor now is ready to share.
I love it.
Okay, he's changing the book title for sure.
I think I need to do that.
I'm loving it.
I was going to call my podcast Night Talk, the Night Club, for soulmates to bring and let them finally develop men that are real gentlemen. Anyway, I'm just going to give. I tend to be I have a hard time picking one thing as a solution because everybody's different. So I like to take a very holistic approach. Now, I'm going to say
multiple things.
3 things that I see connected. If I was going to give anyone some quick advice, number 1 is if we want to build up this human vessel to be a powerful mechanism, we need to heal, let out the infections out, and then replace that with positive nutrients. So as far as the healing, nothing is good. You can't, even solitude. I'll never recommend anyone to go into solitude or meditate. I tried to do that with a friend of mine. The more she went into solitude, the more angry she got. So I realized you have to have connecting links. So the first step is forgive others. You have to forgive others, zap the past, neutralize that, because if you live with that toxicity, no solitude, no meditation, no self-care is going to do it all. So you need to forgive others. Then more is just equally important. Even if you forgive others, you need to forgive yourself for being so hard on yourself all these years. Now, with that toxicity coming out, then there are many methods to grow. So what I recommend to people is that if you want to get into solitude, see what works for you. Like I find some people are more visual, some are more verbal. I teach verbal meditation. I teach silent meditation. If you want to complement that with obviously with prayer, because you've got your mind, you've got your emotions, you've got your intuition, then you've got your spirit. Call it soul. I call it the Zen zone for people that are not necessarily Christians. So we have all these parts. Then you create your own inner power hour of things that help you. Like I'm not attracted to what do you call it when you put on meditation from outside and you listen. I don't relate to that, but I relate to singing. Half my clients who are women blast music for 10 minutes, sing and dance, and they get more out of that than doing a silent meditation. So I don't recommend one or the other. I say, here's a buffet and go and explore on your own, but work on your mind, emotion, and actions and build up your life. And if you do all that every day, you're going to be fine.
It's great.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's why I love the meditations that I do. Sometimes I bust out into song. Sometimes I'm just like speaking a script. Like you just got to learn to be yourself, and I love that. It's my superpower is helping everybody step into their authenticity as a leader, and really having the biblical foundations. So I love what Allan said. That's why I wanted to hear a range of things, guys. Do what works for you. I can't stand cookie cutters. I think you should just make your own way. You pick and, oh, I like this and I like this and this tastes good and that tastes good, and try it on. Does it look, what does that look like? I always say this, when I meet with like certain leaders, and I'm like, you've put Saul's armor on, not David's, not your own. And sometimes it's that little, smooth stones with a little slingshot. And sometimes it is the full armor. But remember that even after he won the battle with Goliath, he turned around and Jonathan gave him his armor, a full armor. The armor, first of all, he couldn't wear Saul's armor. But after he had the battle, after it was timing, God had, it wasn't Saul's armor he needed to wear, it was Jonathan's. And when he had that, he never lost a battle from there. And so timing and understanding, find the coach, the leader that is experienced and that can guide you through, like what Allan said, a variety of things that they're not just seeing one way. I think that it's great when you have somebody, if you're like, I'm convicted, Facebook is the way to go, great. Go to a Facebook coach and they can teach you that. But when you're looking for somebody, I think you should have multiple coaches and then have that one that's a mentor that knows a little bit of each area, but really can actually pray over you and see the heart. And like Allan said, give you guys, give you a variety of tools, and then you try them on and see what works for you. There is no condemnation, right? But that a leader that is not going to give you their own armor because it's not necessarily going to fit you. And it'll leave you even more vulnerable and probably worse off. So thank you guys so much, Bridget, Allan, Kate. Thank you. Is it Kat or Kate? I want to make sure.
It's Kate. It's
Okay,
Kate.
good. Lord Jesus. I was like, afterwards,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, did I say? Because everybody, you never know. But
Thank you, Tanya. This was a very rich
Yes.
conversation, and
So
I,
good.
I got so much out of it. So I want to thank you very much for it.
oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having
No,
us.
yes. And you
That's great.
guys have the link. You guys are always welcome to come on. I think that, we just keep on having these conversations and share it and make it loud enough. It'll continue to hit the right ears, the right people, and will make an impact. So thank you again for another episode of Unseen Marketplace, where we have real, raw, unseen or uncut conversations with amazing leaders within the church and in the marketplace. They're just faith-based. They just love some Jesus. That's it. It's okay. All right. Till next time, guys.